Welcome to the Conduit Deeper podcast, a podcast that takes a deep dive into the details that surround our current sermon series, from current events to fascinating finds to conversations that take us deeper into the Word. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to the Deeper Podcast. My name is Mo, Executive Pastor at Conduit Church, joined with our lead pastor, Darren Tyler, who made the trek all the way back from base camp of Mount Everest to join us for this podcast. The only reason he came back is to be here for this very podcast.
By the way, it's a long ways away. Like, it's so
Describe
far.
How far. Describe how far. Like, what makes it so far? Besides,
So you fly for 30 hours to get there.
So you're in a plane.
Yeah.
For 30 hours straight.
Yeah. Was it Louis C.K.? Like, you're in a chair in the sky.
That's unbelievable.
For 30 hours. And then you land in the Kathmandu, and you're still not almost there. Like,
Kathmandu is in Nepal?
Nepal, yeah.
So Kathmandu, Nepal. Once you get out of the airport, then what?
Then you get either on a helicopter or on a little plane that I probably should know what is, but I don't, to fly into an airport called Lukla, which is, if you're looking to waste a couple hours, it's the most dangerous airport in the world.
Short runway?
Oh yeah, it is invigorating, like because it's so short, and there's only this one kind of plane that can do it, and so when they land, it's like I get a little annoyed when people clap in movies or when they clap when your plane lands. This one, when it lands, 100% standing ovation because you're like, okay, I didn't die.
Wow. How long is that flight?
An hour. Like, it's not very far. But it's the only way to Lukla, which is the entrance to the EBC, the Everest Base Camp Trail.
Then how long is the trail?
It's 78 miles, almost 80 miles round trip that you walk.
Wow.
And on any given day, we were doing it was like my watch thought it had been stolen, because Darren does not climb 300 flights of stairs in a day. So it must have been stolen is the only logical explanation. So you do that for 2 weeks. It's basically, now some of that is you get to a place called Namche Bazaar, which is, I think it's at 13,000, 14,000 feet, but you spend a day there to acclimate to the climate or to the altitude.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, there's a biblical lesson in here somewhere. You can rent a horse, okay? They call them horse on hire. Somewhere there's a translation.
Right.
I would like to on hire a horse. But while we were there the night before we got to the last stop before base camp, someone died that night.
Oh my.
Then it was like, was it my bed? Was it my bed? Like, nobody knew. So it was like, ooh, a little gross. But they died because they rented the horse. But if you don't give your body a chance to acclimate to the altitude, your lungs fill with fluid. And the only way to fix it is to get out and go back down.
So it's a constant state of oxygen management.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
For however long it takes.
Yeah. So like it felt like COVID-19 was happening. Like, we were around the table every night. Our Sherpa Pasong would do oximeter tests on us to see what our blood oxygen levels were. And if they fell below 80 or 75 was like, you're getting a helicopter out of there. Because the next thing is you're coughing up blood. And
yeah, not good.
So, but fortunately none of that happened. So you walk for 2 weeks.
Wow.
I mean, it's like my body's like, we don't walk like this anymore.
Oh.
So, yeah.
What was the highest elevation?
18.5 was the highest we could go. We were headed to 19, but an avalanche had taken out the trail like a few hours before we got there.
That's incredible.
And so
most planes, U.S. flights hover around 35,000 feet.
Yeah.
And you were 18.5 on foot.
Yeah. And by the way, for those that think, hey, this is a tough guy, that's the beginning of the real mountaineers. They go to base camp because that's their base camp. It's not their destination. It's their starting point. So that entire little nickel and dime operation that we were running, they all have to do that as well. And then they start their summit from base camp to there, and it's people die up there all the time. There's memorials, and I guess once you get on the summit, they don't even bury the bodies. Like they just freeze them over and snow them in, and we didn't see any of those because we didn't make it past. An avalanche had taken out we actually didn't make it even to base camp. We were within, I think, 1/8 of a mile, but an avalanche took that trail out as well.
So close.
So we could see it, and we were in the middle of it.
I mean, what do you do if an avalanche is like heading your way? I mean, do they stop, drop, and roll? And what's the protocol here?
So it's that's funny you say that because we were asking the Pasong, our guy, like, is this like a riptide? We had no idea what a riptide was, but it is that. Like, you don't run away from it; you run sideways in it.
Yeah,
because you can't outrun it. No matter how fast you run, you can't outrun an avalanche. So you're trying to run sideways. The goal being either to get out of it completely or at least to the edge of it where the bigger boulders are not coming down. So I'd never seen an avalanche in my life, and I saw and heard dozens of them while we were up there. There was a freak snowstorm. Never happens at this time of year. They usually the end of the climbing season is the end of November, I think. And we were right in this sweet spot of the hiking season because the weather is perfect normally, but we get caught in a blizzard. Like, you're screwed when the guides are taking photographs, right? This is what they do every day. Like, think about that. If you're going to church, we don't sit around taking pictures in the church because this is our job, is what we do. But if something weird is happening, we're taking pictures because this never happens here before. They're all taking selfies in this. Like, this is crazy. This never happens.
Wow.
So we were underprepared, underdressed, because that just doesn't happen.
What's the avalanche sound like? Is it like thunder? Can you hear it in the distance?
Yeah. Oh. Also, did you know that I didn't know that there's thunder snow? Did you know about that?
Yeah, I've heard of thunder snow. We've had that in Nashville before, a couple years ago.
I didn't know anything about that. So
awesome.
On the blizzard day, it was hard to distinguish. You began to figure it out, but there was like thunder and lightning.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was the weirdest. Like it was like thunder. And once you began to, there's a specific difference, but the closest I could say is it sounds like thunder and a train at the same time. And then we did hear, it was kind of sad actually, like there was one where we heard, I think it was a woman screaming, and then it just went silent. So we have no idea. Ugh. And it was miles away down a valley and up somewhere on the other side. And so we didn't see anything other than it just went silent. So I don't know what happened to her.
All the elements, my goodness. I know there's been one question on everybody's mind since you've been gone on this trip.
Good Lord, I had many questions. So.
But no, I mean, there's one that really kind of rises to the top, and that was, did you see a yeti?
No.
You didn't?
No. Man, we were working, and I'll tell you, this is how tired I was. We did go by the monastery where they supposedly have a yeti skull.
Hey, I just want to believe that the big guy's up there somewhere.
Well, I'll tell you this: the Sherpa people, they don't question it. 100%. They talk about it like we talk about coyotes, yeti. So but I was so fried. We were on the way down, and I thought, man, this is my shot. If I get a picture with a yeti skull, I can get on Blurry Creatures podcast. Okay, lifelong dream. For the last 6 months. And but when Pasong told me, it's just a quick up, 20 minutes straight up.
An extra 20 minutes.
Like 1,000 feet elevation gain. I'm like, first of all, that's not 20 minutes. That's 1,000 feet straight up.
You're smoked.
Yeah, and then I got to go back down, and then I got to walk another 10 miles. So I'm like, you know what? It's probably most likely just like a monkey skull that has been put in there. So I didn't get to see the yeti skull.
Now, obviously, that was the back half of your month there, was to do this trek, which is unbelievable. Bucket list, once in a lifetime.
Yep, and done. Off the list.
Got the trophy.
Certificate suitable for framing. I really did.
Like, it's unbelievable. Not many people can say that they did that, so that's pretty cool. That'll come up in a trivia game. But the first half in Nepal, you spent time with our brothers and sisters in what I guess could be classified as an underground church.
Yeah, it's that's a good way of. I was trying to think how to articulate it, because North Africa is truly, it's the logical conclusion of persecution. Those churches are completely underground and completely illegal. The needle in Nepal has moved in the last decade from churches being frowned upon and marginalized to now. So if you're baptizing people there, they call it a forced conversion. So what they mean by forced conversion is anybody who is Hindu or Islam, converting to Christianity, they call it forced conversion, and that is illegal. So even baptisms, we were doing at night so that they weren't, that's not true. They wanted us to do it at night because they didn't want us to get in trouble. And I'm like, no. If you guys want to do it during the day, let's do it in the day. Like we don't need to hide this, but that's the reason they wanted to, was because they didn't want us to get us arrested as foreigners.
What's the primary religion?
So 1%, I think it's 1.5% are Christian. And then I think it's, 30-40% are Hindu, and then the remainder are split between Muslim and Buddhist.
So those three religions coexist, and everybody's cool?
I wouldn't go that far. So the radical Hindus and radical Muslims do hate each other.
Okay.
But they hate Christians more.
Wow.
And so that's they're sort of united around that cause.
But it's not illegal to be a Buddhist. It's not illegal to be Muslim.
No, not at all.
It's illegal for Christian.
Yeah. In fact, the laws are that they've just passed even this year. In fact, I think it was July. You can Google it and find it. But like Nepal, the government, the communist government of Nepal, the Communist Party, issued a formal warning and be on the lookout. We call that a bolo here in America. I don't know what they call it in Nepal. But it was be on the lookout for foreigners who are leading Christian events or churches in the country. So all local authorities be on the lookout to arrest.
You fit the description.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Hit a bolo alert out on Darren Tyler.
Yeah, so we get to the, it's called Tumlingtar, which is in far east Nepal. Like it's in the corner of like where Bhutan and Tibet. Like you can see Tibet in the mountains from where we were.
Wow.
But we landed in this airport and the security guys pulled me aside, took a photo of my passport on their iPhone, whatever, Android. Just so that I knew that they knew that I was there. And because what we were doing is 100% illegal with the new laws that were passed with it. And so, yeah, at that point they were like, are
they asking you, are you here for business or pleasure? Or are they just like trying to intimidate?
No, they just know. Cause I clearly
fit the description of,
I fit the description, and it's a medium-sized town. Like it's not a city. These are those, like when you see the plane crashes in Nepal and these random runways, it was one of those kind of places.
Wow.
I think maybe 40,000 people in total in this little town in the mountains that's only accessible by plane. But there's, you could look in the line and that there was almost all locals. There was one hiker in the group, there's two hikers, they were Euro-looking dude. Like they look like hikers. You can look at me and think, that guy's not a hiker. Like no amount of North Face luggage makes him think that guy's going to try to summit, Everest from this side. So yeah, they knew why I was there.
Interesting.
And and we, look, elections have consequences, and inside of the Nepali country, the country of Nepal. They've got multiple political parties. We are a two-party system for good or worse or whatever, but they have like a Democratic Party, which is not like our version of a Democrat. It's like just democracy. There's the Hindu Party, and there's a Communist Party, among others. And the Communists have been in power for the last few years now in Kathmandu. They're the central. And there's still disagreement even there. Like they're like any other government, they're fighting each other. But because elections have consequences, the communists are the ones making the laws. And one of the laws is we don't want Christians infiltrating our country. And just like every place else, when communism comes, the country is not better afterwards. Like if you talk to the average Nepali at a restaurant or whatever, everybody I encountered anyway, all were very, very, very frustrated with their government right now, the corruption, the communism.
Yeah, thinking of our brothers and sisters over there, coming off of the past couple of Sundays where we've jumped back into the sermon series and talking specifically about, and with Joel, and then on this past Sunday, myself, just talking about the importance, the trustworthiness of the Scriptures, and how Peter calls us to for that to be a hill to die on, to live a life that is led by the Scriptures, and to not forsake them, especially in dark times. He uses that language. Thinking of our brothers and sisters in Nepal, what's the level of hunger that they have for teaching and discipleship, and compare and contrast that to maybe what we experience here in the States?
I mean, when you've got something on tap, there's a tendency as humans to just take it for granted, right? But they don't have it on tap there. In fact, Bibles being printed in Nepal, I think I'm getting this right, are illegal as well.
Really?
So bringing Bibles in is illegal. Printing them is illegal. And so,
wow.
And think about that for just a moment. What is the first thing, whether someone goes apostate in progressive Christianity or in, Islam, one of the first things they do is attack the veracity, the reliability of the Scripture, and then silence it. Nobody's silencing the Quran in Nepal, right? The teachings of Buddha are not outlawed but the Word of God is. Which is why I was so glad that you covered that on Sunday. That's God's Word is so important, and you could just look at it because it's hated so much. It's why I want to take pastors in America who begin to attack the veracity of Scriptures, or at least to pick it apart so that they can live the way that they want to live. And we've had pastors in our community that do that. It's the same game plan that Satan has had for thousands of years, right?
Started in the garden, right?
Yeah. Did God really say? And to be able to trust it. So I was really happy that you covered that so well and gave some good resources for it. And hopefully you got good feedback, right, from that. I would think you would have.
Yeah, no, definitely good feedback. It was, I think the word I heard the most in terms of feedback was just encouraged, that people felt encouraged and like a revitalization of hope. Okay, like this is real. Like what we do matters in terms of our faith and the Scriptures, and it's the foundation in which we build off of, and it has validity, and this is a real thing. This isn't some concocted story that we've made up and that we're holding to. Like these things actually happened, and we get to be conduits of telling the story and retelling the story over and over again, and it still holds water because it's true.
Yeah. And that, when you encounter people who, again, they don't have 28 Bibles sitting in their house. They don't have grandma's, Strong's Concordant study Bible. They just, if they have one Bible, they're ecstatic about it. And then they'll sit for hours. And by the way, on the floor, there's no chairs. And it is, they're crammed in there like Spirit Airlines, man.
It's not comfortable.
No, it's elbows and buttholes, man. We're just like crammed in together, like squeezed in so tight. And
they take coffee breaks. They had snacks available.
Yeah. There was no coffee bar, right? And to my knowledge, nobody was even providing snacks. We did provide lunch, I guess, but for hours and hours and hours, 8 to 10 hours a day.
What were you teaching specifically? What was there a theme or a passage or a book?
We focused in on the attributes of God, which
very good
is interesting there because in a world where there's a plurality of gods, it's easy to mix in some of your Hindu cultural thing into Christianity, which reframes God as something completely different. So again, something we see in the United States with secular progressives, whatever, trying to retrofit their religion into Scripture, and then their world as well, because there's multiple gods. They, this is, am I just adding a god onto my list? Like the Buddhist tradition would say that we need all 5 of these, the major world religions: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism. And they will use the idea of 5 fingers on a hand and all of them matter. That's such a Buddhist idea. And the problem with that is that I don't know for sure about Buddha, but I know the other 4 fingers of those religions, none of those, including Hinduism, allow for that. Like the actual gods that they believe in Hinduism do not believe that Buddhism is an option for them. And when you put into context, to me, this was really fascinating, especially if you want to go blurry on it. Paul said in 2 Corinthians that your foreign gods are demons. So we see a statue and we think, oh, they're just talking to this gold thing, which they are. There's no life in the statue. The Bible talks specifically about those foreign gods. But I do believe, and I believe Paul backs this up, that every foreign god, like in Hinduism, for instance, is actually representative of an actual demonic principality and power. And what happens then? So if you're a believer and you bring Jesus into this village, they've already got a god who is assigned to that village. There's a temple and a deity. So what they believe, the locals, if you're Hindu, believe that then you've just brought a foreign god into our village, and our God is going to curse us and punish us because you let this foreign god into this.
Interesting.
Right?
So they create a physical manifestation of a spiritual ruler in that area, worship it. Do they pray to it? Do they?
Oh yeah, sacrifice to it, pray to it. There's usually a temple built around it, and again, so out of fear. So if you're a believer, I mean, one of the most exciting things I've ever done in my entire life was there was a guy that we baptized while we were there, and I feel terrible because I cannot remember the tribe. But Nepal is not a unified, homogenous society. There are hundreds of tribes. Like Sherpa isn't a job, it's a people group. There's a language, the Sherpa language. But this guy was the very first person in his tribe to put his faith in Jesus.
Wow.
First one. Like, that was cool. Every tongue, nation, and tribe.
Wow.
And so to baptize him. But here's the danger that guy faces now is when he's home, his neighbors, it's so weird. It reminds you so much of COVID because, you're endangering the whole community if you don't follow our rules, right? It's such a demonic idea.
Yes.
And so, he likely will be very marginalized, persecuted, and possibly beaten and killed. That happens a lot.
Because they feel like he's a threat.
He is in their religion. Their demonic god thinks that he brought a foreign god in, and if they don't eliminate this threat, then they're going to be punished for it.
That feels a lot like 4.5 years ago.
Yes. I'm sitting here going, there's nothing new under the sun. When the Bible speaks of familiar spirits, it's like, that felt familiar. Because it's the same enemy, the same Satan that does it. So yeah, when you go and proclaim, Jesus as the God, he's not a God to add to your list. There is no list. There's only one God. And it's a shocking feeling for them because there's a huge amount of persecution that they experience in those villages and that's not including like the national stuff. I'm just talking the local level,
right?
Which again, back to COVID, you end up with this community was really hardcore against it, and they handled it just a little bit different than this community, but they put the morality on top of it for, again, safety, whatever language they want to use, but. Which is why each one of these pastors, they represent, an enormous amount of sacrifice by following Jesus, putting their trust in it. And they open their Bibles like God meant it to be, which is this is God's word. So of course we'll sit for 10 hours. And by the way, they don't do that just because there's a foreigner there. They would have done it even without that. Like that's just that's what they do. They're hungry for the word. They don't have podcasts that they're consuming. There's no 35-minute, there's no we got to clear the parking lot. There's just things in our culture and context that aren't even necessarily sinful. They're just the way it is.
Right.
And they don't experience any of that. So they will sit and they don't want to go. And these are people, some of these guys walked. I have people raise your hands. How many of you walked more than 10 hours? How many of you walked more than 2 days? And multiple people walked for days to get there. They were sleeping on the floor in the church on a mat, no pillow, But for them to be in the same room with other believers every day of their lives, they are 1% of the population. And in many of their villages, they're the only, not just 1%, they're the one person in that. So to be around other believers, again, something we take for granted because we get mad, we just go to a different church. There are no other churches, right, in this village or this town, right? So they get together with each other. It's a very inspiring thing for them to do.
So interesting to think that out of 100 people in a room, one of them is a Christ follower. Here in the U.S., I think roughly, 40% would say that they're Christians. And then obviously there's all kinds of definitions of that.
Yeah.
But to say out of 100 people in a room that 40 would say they're believers, but then, what of that 40, like where are they on the spectrum of actually, living the life of Christ and being a disciple of Christ? I just feel like we have so much to learn from our brothers and sisters in these areas about the hunger and just what it looks like to live in a persecuted country.
Yeah.
It's seemingly coming for us here in the United States. Let's be honest.
Yeah, we've been sheltered here. What we've experienced in the last few hundred years of our nation is the exception in history, not the rule, where a country founded on Christian principles, actually that's the first and the only time that's ever happened, to my knowledge, in history. And we've been so blessed. And again, human nature is to take for granted what you have a lot of. And so what's happened, of course, is that now our culture has shifted, arguably because the church was asleep at the wheels. We decided we didn't want to get involved in politics or whatever because politics or this or that, And the good news, if you're Satan, is if the church absolves ourselves of that responsibility, Satan is glad to disciple, of course, our country and glad to lead our country. And so, the idea that Christians shouldn't be involved in any of that has resulted in a whole lot of godless people now being the ones in charge of it, and that is exactly what's happened in Nepal. Not because they didn't have, or that they absolved their responsibility, but there's only 1% of them voting it. And so the numbers are against them. So we still have that responsibility, I believe, in our nation to vote God's laws, our conscience on it. But if we don't, the consequences, we're living in the consequences of it.
Since you've been gone,
what have I missed?
Cue Kelly Clarkson song right there. You missed a VP debate, which was fun. Vance and Waltz had a debate. While you were over there, did they cover anything? Can you see anything? Were they talking about it? Are you just trying to, whatever signal that you actually had, were you able to keep up a little bit what's going on here in the U.S.?
I was able to keep up a tiny bit,
bits and pieces.
For a week of that almost, we had zero signal at all. It was interesting to see the Kathmandu Post, which publishes an English copy of it.
Yeah, I'm really curious what they cover.
Yeah, they cover they do cover some of the stuff, but it's very communist in nature. So it's very pro Kamala, very anti-Trump.
Wow.
Right?
Speaks for itself.
Yeah. If your communist newspaper is, like when she does that unburdened thing, that's straight out of Karl Marx's playbook. Like we don't know that because we didn't read Marx, but they did. They know what she's saying.
They love it.
They think it's awesome. I was, I kind of missed that, but here's what I would like to think it was, because it probably was whatever news organization hosted it.
CBS
covered it. Didn't fact check Kamala at all, but fact check.
They made
Vance.
Well, it's Vance and Waltz, right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
They, because Kamala got a promotion. They agreed beforehand that there would be no fact checking of
either candidate.
That they just wouldn't get into that. And so...
And did they hold to that?
No. They started to fact check Vance, of which he started to fact check them back.
Yeah, he's a pretty smart son of a gun.
He dominated.
For a redneck hillbilly from Ohio, he's a smart guy, yeah.
I love it. He's literally from my hometown, graduated from the same high school as my family members. So yeah, I'm a Vance guy. But he was so calm, cool, collected, courteous. Like it was the exact balance that you would hope he would bring to a Trump ticket, you know? Just smooth as butter.
Yeah.
I mean, well prepared. I mean, there's all kinds of statements out there. I'm sure you can read and get caught up that people believe it was the best debate performance ever.
Interesting.
And Walz was he's a kind of a cartoon character. He got flustered and flabbergasted, but also he's kind of like he's kind of likable in the sense he just I don't know, laughs at himself, and he's just kind of a bumbling kind of a guy. Huh. And Vance kind of drew that out and was friendly to him. It's like kind of an all shucks routine with him a little bit.
Right.
But it was, I don't know. I felt like it went well, but I was just curious mostly of how that was portrayed overseas at all, if it even covered it.
Yeah, so I definitely didn't hear anything. When that was going on, I think I was deep in the mountains.
Yeah, probably.
I know we were joking about wanting to watch it while we were up there, and we hadn't seen a TV or a signal, in days with it.
Yeah, I mean, so that was probably one of the major political things that have happened, apart from both candidates being on every podcast imaginable, including our good friend Dave Ramsey was able to interview Trump this past week, so that was kind of neat.
Did you? So I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, I watched it yesterday, actually.
He sent an email to his little group that he was going to do it. It was actually really cool because Dave's he's done okay for a hillbilly, and but it was so cool to think, hey, here's this redneck hillbilly from like Antioch, Tennessee, sitting across from former president of the United States. And did you see the interview?
Yes.
Did he get him to stay on target? It's hard to do, but
yeah, no, I felt like he did a good job. He asked a lot of questions and kind of held him to task in terms of answering the questions. They were all the very similar talking points. I don't feel like we learned anything new,
right?
Perhaps, but Donald, mentioned that he knew who Dave was, just listened to him in the past, and familiar with who he is and what he's doing. He thinks it's awesome. So that was.
You think that was true?
It came across as if it was.
It's possible because, Dave, he's got a huge reach.
Yeah, and he's been around a long time.
Yeah.
It's not like some new guy.
It just feels like if you're Trump, like he's not the guy that you'd be listening to because he's built his entire organization on corporate debt, the whole thing. He's been bankrupt, but.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Huh.
But I felt overall it was good. So, yeah, between, all things politics, we're a month away from an election. And then also, obviously, since you were gone, we had a very major disaster in terms of a Hurricane Helene that came through and ripped through the eastern part of the U.S. Again, I don't know how much of that you were able to really cover or see or stay in touch with.
The only way I was able to do that while I was over there was just watching you guys, the email trails back and forth, because I think I was starting to get signal again when those started going through.
Yeah.
And it was, for me, I felt like I was playing catch up because I'm like, this is not like the Appalachian Mountains. Like they're getting hammered with flooding. I didn't even know that was an option.
Yeah, it's not really.
And historic, obviously.
Historic.
And then coming home to another one getting ready to hit the shore.
Yeah, at the date of this recording, Wednesday, October 9th, Hurricane Milton is about to make landfall in roughly Tampa area in the next 6 hours or so. So today, the 9th of October, and it's not good.
Yeah, we've got work to do there.
Potentially historic size hurricane about to hit the Tampa area. So that's 2 in 10 days, something like that. Billions of dollars worth of damage and recovery efforts. And to kind of switch gears a little bit, our missions pastor, Eric, and a team are on the road right now heading to the Appalachian Mountains, specifically Waynesville, North Carolina, outside of Asheville.
You know, I've stayed in Waynesville before.
Waynesville, North Carolina?
Yeah, so true story. Jay and Pam Seculo have a house in Waynesville.
Are you serious?
That's Pam's childhood home. She was born and raised in Waynesville. I had never heard of it, but it's like the eastern gateway to the Smoky Mountains.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, they've got this beautiful little, you know, it's a modest home. We stayed there. It's been almost 12 years ago.
I'm curious if it survived.
I am too. I haven't had a chance even to reach out to Pam.
Wow.
But it's right in the heart of that. And so, yeah, I think, what is it, 30, 40 minutes from Asheville?
Southwest of Asheville. And like I said, we have a team heading that way. You know, I-40 is completely washed out.
I-40?
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I don't know what you know or don't know.
Well, I didn't know that. That's a big deal.
So basically outside of Knoxville, heading to Asheville, I-40 is gone.
An interstate.
Correct. Yeah, through the valley. Projected reopening 2029. Literally doesn't
interstate.
It literally doesn't exist anymore. It's washed away.
So what are they doing for traffic going through there?
It's a disaster. I mean, you can't get there from here. You have to go. So from, let's say, Chattanooga or Nashville, you have to go to Atlanta and then back up into Greenville to get to that side of the country. Or you go north around.
Yeah, 75, I guess, would go up north around.
Well, you have to cut over in northern Kentucky and PA, actually, and then loop back around. It is a major thoroughfare that is cut off east-west. Yeah,
and it's, I mean, I spent, weirdly, little known fact about Darren, I spent a lot of time there because in the mid-90s, when the Southern Gospel agent quit at the company I was at, I drew the short straw and had to book Southern Gospel bands.
Yeah.
But the Kingsmen, where they were from Asheville.
Wow, yeah.
And so I would, you know, drive over there. But I'm like, that's, if you're from this part of the country, you know this. If you're not, like, when you talk east to west here, I-40.
It's the main.
Yeah.
It's the only.
Yeah, I mean, it's east to west, and it's not like flat like in Kansas where you could cut up to I-70 and go across. Like, it's just not that simple over there.
No. So basically, Knoxville to Greenville is what most traffic tries to get from western Tennessee to, eastern Tennessee to western Carolinas. That's the main.
Wow. Well, that's going to affect the supply chain. It's going to affect shipping costs, like for getting goods in and out of there. Wow.
5 years. It's washed away.
Let me tell you this, man. That frustrates me that it's 5 years. That's so America.
Right.
I promise you, if that were China, they'd have that thing redone in a month and be back up and running again. Like, we have so much government bloat and bureaucracy that it would take 5 years to build a highway. We built the entire interstate system in less than 5 years under Eisenhower. I mean, that was the entire country built out, you know, in less than 5 years. We were talking about just putting that's infuriating government incompetence.
And that's part of the talking point, again, over the past 48 hours is government bureaucracy and the frustration that these small towns are having with receiving funding and resources.
Yeah.
FEMA and TEMA, and I guess it would be, I don't know what the acronym is for North Carolina, NCEMA.
Mm-hmm.
They're not all of them have been playing nice. They've been giving stand down orders, not across the board, but in individual different areas. They're being very complicated. Some of them have not been welcoming relief efforts from locals, and they're just causing all kinds of confusion and frustration. The only system that's working to get relief efforts and actual manpower to where it needs to go is through the local church.
Yeah.
Period. And para-organizations, such as Hope Force, Samaritan's Purse.
Yeah.
Which
are armed and staffed with local churches.
Convoy of Hope is another one.
Yeah.
Yes, they're staffed with local, and that's been the direct connection that we've been able to establish immediately. Was with brothers and sisters at local churches in Western North Carolina specifically, that are boots on the ground, creating a hub and creating systems and processes and administration that is getting the resources to those families that have lost everything. And it's working. It's working really well. Now the need is great, and the trouble that we're in right now is that we're heading into winter months, and there's a lot of conversation about no electricity for months, no water or sewer for months. It's about to get really, really cold up there in the mountains especially. So we've got a humanitarian crisis unfolding in front of our eyes.
Right. Which, if I'm right on my little eschatological time clock, Matthew 24:25 is unfolding right in front of our eyes. And when you get to 25, when he starts talking about, did you feed me when I was hungry? Did you clothe me when I was naked? Did you visit me when I was in prison? That's all in the context of persecution being amplified, of natural disasters being multiplied. And Jesus' response to that for us, his marching orders was, you guys need to be in the trenches, helping, loving, and serving those who, the quote, least of these brothers of mine. That was the context in which he spoke that, was in these end times. And so, getting our team over there, it did my heart really good. I think I told you this in a text or an email, I don't remember now, but to know that I was in the mountains and you guys didn't skip a beat, like you were on it, and you're on it, Eric's on it. I'm excited. I'm back and I'm ready to rumble. I've been back in the United States for 18 hours now, and I've got my gloves on and ready to go to battle for what's in front of us, especially with Milton coming in.
Yes.
And with whatever else is, on the horizon for us. But it shows you that, the local church, we weren't just supposed to sit around and, come to church on a Sunday. That's not the answer at all. It's like Sundays where we get our marching orders, Sundays where we get a little bit of food. But, Sunday through Sunday is when God's church is called to reach up. And it's been cool to see this happen as well, just organically in our church, watching different people. It's when we talk about Hebrews 10:24, when you come together, inspire one another to love and to good deeds. So, I've seen like the Lane family, Brittany, Ostebo, I always say that name wrong, but just people in the church just organically going to work. They didn't wait for our permission. They just did it. But that's what Jesus people are supposed to do. Jesus people coming together, acting like Jesus together is the local church. And I felt and still feel very proud of our church and the people in there, because the church isn't a what, it's a who. And to watch individuals work together, whether it's beside you and Eric or just on their own, like there's not a competition. We need everybody, all hands on deck. So that's been really amazing to watch.
Yeah, and I think it's been amazing to watch that happen with a bunch of churches in our area, our brothers and sisters, across town. There's so many local churches have been mobilized and are heading to the hard places, which these are hard places. Like you literally can't get there in some places without a helicopter or an airstrip.
Speaking of helicopter, on my flight last night back from Miami was Jeremy, I think Locke. His organization is called Aerial Recovery Group. And they're a disaster relief organization. He's a military guy, 20 years. I would for sure never fight him ever. But they're running, and of course they're running into all kinds of local bureaucracy, but trying to it's basically volunteers, all U.S. Army, whatever, military veterans, pilots. They've worked in Haiti, but they're working right now. He was coming back from Miami and they're headed out this morning, like 2 a.m. for Milton stuff. But I know they had experienced a lot of resistance from local FEMA stuff because, they're supposedly these rogue organizations and they're not falling in line. And of course, this guy served in the government and he's not interested in listening to incompetent bureaucracy. So they're doing it anyway, which is good on him with it. But again, staffed by military guys, but it's local churches that are keeping that organization running.
Yeah. I I'm hesitant to go down this road, but I feel like we kind of have to, just a little bit. Just maybe we'll touch and go. There is the conspiracy world has lost their mind a little bit, and I want to maybe try to help rein it in.
Okay.
If we can.
Yeah, this will be fun. The unsubscribe button, right?
Right. I mean, if you don't like it, I mean, there's like 1 bazillion other podcasts. The amount of people immediately jumping onto this idea that these are man-made hurricanes is a little scary to me. Just because I just feel like we need to tap the brakes on some of this talk.
Yeah.
It's very dangerous, in my opinion. Yes, does weather modification exist? 100%, and has for the last 60 years. In fact, part of the patents and R&D research came out of my hometown in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Huh.
Very familiar with all of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I had friends in high school whose dads worked on some of these projects, so it's not like some secret or conspiracy that we can modify weather. That has existed for a long time. But I would just give caution to immediately saying that our government or whatever powers exist are ushering in these storms as fact. Mm-hmm. Could it be a combination of all of these things? Possibly. I mean, all of it's possible. I wouldn't put it past our government to pull any trick right now.
Yeah, I would think if the power existed to accomplish this, no question that the governments would be weaponizing it, whether it's U.S. or China or.
Yes.
But my problem with that is the amount of power that it would require. And by the way, the other side of this coin is climate change. To assume that humans are so powerful that we are affecting the climate is the accepted wisdom, with seemingly no acknowledgement that the climate has changed dozens and hundreds of times over the years. Like it was changing 1,000 years ago. The last ice age changed. There were no cars back then that caused it. The point is we humans, there's a narcissism in that we are so powerful that we are the ones affecting the climate. It's beyond imagination how much power it would take to create a storm of that magnitude. Now, the power, the prince of the power of the air, right, which is the Bible, Paul refers to Satan as the prince of the power of the air. So, is there a conspiracy from the pit of hell? Maybe. Jesus said that it was going to happen, so for sure that's it. But yeah, I saw a little post last night where they were showing this looks like a laser that's being shot into a thing, and I'm like, oh.
Which again, I just want people to hear me say that I am very aware of all the capabilities and how possible it is for these things to be true. I've researched it ad nauseum. I have so many articles and papers around this stuff. Mm-hmm. So I believe it's absolutely possible. Our Department of Defense, the DoD, and DARPA in of itself, like they are for sure using weather modification. They are weaponizing weather in certain areas. Like it's happened for years and years and years. I am just asking our brothers and sisters to just tap the brakes a little bit on that. Just don't go full send on everything that you read.
Yeah.
Maybe just pull back, observe, give it some time, see how it plays out. And the thing that I go back to is what you just mentioned, Matthew 24, where it talks about rumors of wars and there will be famines and earthquakes. And then verse 8 of chapter 24 says, all these are but the beginning of birth pains.
Yeah.
We're going to experience things, natural or man-made, it doesn't matter, but it's going to heat up, as it were, across the globe, here at home and across the world.
Which is, again, prepared, not scared. We've used that phrase ad nauseum. It is important to be prepared. Hurricane Katrina changed me in 2004 because that was one disaster in one city, and our government was inept at being able to help.
Yeah, that woke a lot of people up.
Yeah, it did me. And I have since then been prepared, because imagine three of those in one, three cities going on simultaneously. Imagine, there is, being prepared is just good leadership of your family in general, good leadership of the church in general, the preparation for, because we don't know. Even if it's not Matthew 24, just being prepared is a good thing for your family. But as a church, that again, back to Matthew 25, after he talks about all of these things, the beginning of the birth pains, the church's role is not to shrink back, not to hide, but to be ready to love, to comfort, to provide, to alleviate suffering for the least of these brothers of mine.
Yes.
Here and around the world. If you're a church and you've got a worship team, you've got a youth ministry, you've got a kids ministry, but you do not have a disaster relief, whatever you want to call it, ministry. I mean, think about the early church, the first ministry. They didn't have a youth ministry, but they sure were feeding widows. Like if you don't have that in your church planting model, you've missed maybe the most important part of the church itself, which is loving each other in that very practical way. We use words, and I understand why we use words like benevolence, they're sort of saccharine, but that's an important part of the church, which is the disciples came together and they saw the needs of the community. And the reason that matters is that, especially in a Roman culture, I just came out of a culture where helping someone with special needs, for instance, is considered ridiculous because they've got bad karma. They came back as a special needs person because they were being punished in the life before. So if I'm alleviating the suffering of someone with special needs, then I am actually interfering with the will of whatever God punished that person. That's a wicked, demonic, but that is Satan, and it's history. What we do is the exception, not the rule to it. So when the early church was helping orphans and widows, that culture would have been like, what would you do that for? There was no Roman safety net for the widows, for the women, for those who were desperately needed. But we as a church, again, we might take it for granted because we think that all humans are created equal, but that's a Christian idea. That is not a secular idea, and it is not existent in any other religion in the world then or now.
Yeah, just one final thought, and we can put a period on this, and I've got a couple more questions for you. Let's just say that it is all true. It's all direct energy weapons, and it's all on purpose. I wouldn't get caught up and worry about the reason as much as we as the church need to be ready with a response. Yeah. And how can we respond in this time and help our brothers and sisters?
Yeah, right. Instead of focusing on the reason, being focused on being ready. And look, I could be wrong, but I just, the power, I just came from Everest, okay? I just watched the power of nature, God's world, and the fallen nature of this world, that man cannot stop certain things, and I don't know that they can start certain. Again, you're right. You've done the research way more than I have, but the power that it would take to do that, I don't know that any human has, but I do know that Satan has it. The kingdom of darkness has it. So whether it's genetically, whether it is created in a lab with lasers or whether it is created in the pit of hell or maybe some combination of both.
Sure.
Jesus said it was going to happen, and so we ought not to be surprised.
Yes.
And then he told us what we needed to do, which is to be ready and to be prepared. And as a local church, I'm just so doggone proud of our church family. Absolutely. So doggone proud of them.
Yeah. And then kind of one last thing, kind of want to get your thoughts on it too. I mean, while all of this is going on, also, things in the Middle East continue to heat up.
Yeah.
Even this morning, I believe Hezbollah launched, did I read 300 missiles towards northern Israel, and one of them landed in a specific city and it was a civilian area.
Yeah.
So that continues to ramp up, obviously coming off the 1 year anniversary of what happened over there. The city I just lost the city that was hit. The invasion, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
October 7th. And so I was just curious too of kind of what your take is on that. If you had a chance to, again, you've been out. I'm not sure what communication you've had with some of our friends in Israel over the past couple of weeks, but I'm curious to kind of know where their headspace is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've had my fair share through WhatsApp and Signal conversations, checking in, because obviously Iran had directly assaulted them again. And so far, the Iron Dome has continued to hold.
Talk about technology that is helpful.
Yeah, shooting a bullet with a bullet.
Wow,
it's amazing what they've been able to accomplish. Yeah, the front page of the Wall Street Journal this morning was the Biden administration is frustrated because Israel is not letting him in on their plans. Like we owe that. You know, if you're Israel, like you owe that to the United States. Like you've earned the trust of them. If you're President Biden, who may or may not be the president, that you've earned that right to be. You know, they are a sovereign nation, whether you like it or not. And they have the absolute not only right, but responsibility to defend themselves. And they don't need to ask permission. And they sure as heck don't need to be letting him in on their plans. So they were frustrated because that the U.S. government did not know about the plans for blowing up Hezbollah leaders with their pagers and their walkie-talkies, which, sidebar, pretty wild way to do that. Like, you talk about that's like a mission impossible.
Surgical, strategic, well thought out, planned, executed.
Like, unbelievable. They invaded their supply chain somehow. Now, I don't know if this was part of their thinking, but, you know, in radical Islam, the 72 virgins, if that pager went off in their pockets, you know, that kind of messes up the 72 virgins plan right there. I mean, just, you know, blew their manhood right out of their zippers. But brilliant strategy on their part of doing them in. And, you know, I continue to be frustrated, maybe is the right word. Sad, no, it's sad is what it is. At Christians especially, who don't seem to be able to separate supporting the people of Israel and supporting the government of Israel.
Yeah.
And, you know, as I was thinking about it in the last few weeks, even some of the accusations against us for helping Israel and the, quote, the Jews, you know, first of all, anytime, and I say this, whether you're Candace Owens or whoever, when you start saying, like, you impugn an entire people group because of the behavior of a few people in that people group, that's 100% what Candace Owens stands against, you know, as a black woman, you know, but she's using that same, in my opinion, failed logic on, quote, the Jews. And whenever you start putting people into a group like that and all of them think the same thing, like that never ends well. It would be like saying the Germans because of the evil doing of a few Germans. Like, we still, you know, you don't see people talking about the Germans, I guess, except for the Norm Macdonald bit on David Letterman, which if you've not seen that bit, it's hilarious. Google Norm Macdonald's last appearance on David Letterman. But I'm frustrated with it because if Israel loses this, okay, not just from a biblical, spiritual standpoint, billions of Christians around the world view and hold Israel as a very special and holy place for them. And if radical Islam takes over that, that's gone. It's just gone. They have done their dead level best. They meaning Hamas and the PLO. So again, not impugning an entire people called the Palestinians. I'm talking about their leadership. If they take over that, kiss all of that goodbye. You know, there are sites in Iraq and Iran that are very special to Christians that you can't go to. Now imagine them taking over the whole Middle East that way, and Israel alone stands there. So number one, just it's important to us for that. Number two, geopolitically it's important. It's the only democracy in the Middle East. They are holding the line because as soon as they're done with Israel, they're coming for us. They've made no secrets about this. They meaning the Ayatollah, Iran, Hezbollah, the Hamas organization. They view us and everything that we hold special as an enemy of them, and they want us destroyed. And it's baked into the teachings of the Quran is convert or be killed. So I get frustrated with and I don't want to say the conspiracy crowd because, it seems like half the conspiracies are true. But I do want to caution you, if you're wondering why would we support Israel, I'm wondering why you wouldn't support people that hold to the same values that we hold. Now, are there people inside of Israel that are not? Yes. And there are people inside of the United States that are not. So I can support the American people without supporting Joe Biden, right? But what seems to be happening right now, I appreciated Netanyahu, who, again, I'm not a huge fan. He's shut that country down. He put the vaccine on the front of the mind and blocked people in their homes. I've not forgotten that. We'll never forget that. But, his speech last week that he aimed at Macron from France, which is, get out of our way. We are protecting ourselves against it. And it is true. They are a small country being attacked on 7 different fronts. And they stand almost completely alone with it. And if you go back to Israel, you go back to the prophecies, no nation has ever been disappeared off the face of the earth and then reappeared. That happened in 1948. I hold steadfast to the prophecies that there's a reason that Israel exists and that they will be victorious, not because of them, but because of God and Jesus himself with it. And in the meantime, man, be praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Be praying, bless those. God says, I will bless you if you bless those, my people. And if you curse them, you're on your own with it. So I'm holding still steady to that and believing that, man, we are on the cusp of something that's not scary. It's invigorating to see what's happening in our world. Like when you can start cross-referencing your local, your national news with the Bible, It's like, okay, we're okay. Jesus said this was going to happen. So if you don't have Jesus, good luck with it. I don't know how you wake up in the morning other than just to ignore the reality. I know why so many godless people are so scared, because there's no hope. They see the reality and there's no hope. But with Jesus, we hold on to that, including what's going on in Israel.
Yes. We're glad you're back.
It's
Welcome
good to
back.
be here, man.
You have some treats or snacks or what did you miss from the U.S. that you didn't get over there?
Red meat. Remember, I've been doing the carnivore thing, right? And there's like perfectly good cows walking around, and they're not eating any of them. Even the Hard Rock Cafe, I had to have a water buffalo burger.
Well, how was that?
Ugh. I mean,
A little gummy.
it's not a cow. They might look kind of like a cow, but it was like a. And then they had yak burgers.
Sounds great.
No, it was not. And a yak steak, which kind of reminded me of the Salisbury steak. Remember those?
Oh yeah.
It's like they just swept up whatever was left of the cow and then mushed it together and called it a Salisbury steak. So you got cow lips and whatever in it. But yeah, so this morning, man, I got up and I threw a T-bone straight on the heat, and at 5 o'clock this morning, just destroyed a T-bone steak.
I was thinking cheeseburgers in your future for lunch.
So I did have one last night.
You did? You snuck one in.
Yeah, there's the Miami airport is like the bane of my existence. I've been in it so many times because it's the only way in and out of Haiti is through Miami. But there's this little island, it's called Island Bar or something like that. And it's always right next to the Nashville gate. Mm. And yeah, Ethan and I polished off a big old burger and fries. But I am back on the wagon this morning, man. No more nonsense. I got to get back on the wagon and get back to my carnivore diet.
Oh, that's great. Welcome home. Glad you're back.
Good to be here. 2 Peter this week.
2 Peter this week, we saved you specifically. We saved it for you. Teed it up so you can tackle false prophets.
False prophets and false teachers.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be fun, man, because it's like, I'm pretty excited about this. How some of them you're like, oh, I can't wait for this one. That's why I made you guys ask. I didn't make you. I asked you to split chapter 1 into 2 chapters.
Great.
Because when it talks about false prophets, false teachers, there's 3 different pictures of it in the New Testament. There's Paul calls, I think it's Philippians, calls them dogs. Jesus calls them hogs, and then wolves. So it's wolves, dogs, and hogs.
Oh, wow.
And each one does something different. The wolves, you can tell a wolf by what they eat, not by what they wear. So if they're eating the sheep, so if you're pulling away. So that's what Jesus referred to them as wolves. It was, by the way, right in the passage of don't judge. Whenever you start teaching about false teachers, people are like, oh, you're not supposed to judge. Right after Jesus says, judge not lest you be judged, he starts talking about false prophets and he calls them wolves. Paul, when he's talking about the dogs, it's about, he calls them this, God, he uses a phrase like the mutilators of the flesh. And what he means is the dogs are the ones that try to force religion on you, force the rules and the regulations and the policies and the procedures, just like a yippy dog. And honestly, just like the social justice warriors of our modern day. They make a lot of noise and no impact, just like a yippy dog. And then pigs, the swine, pearls before swine, pigs get very social, but they try to drag you into the mud with them. So if you've got, those are the three different kinds of false teachers, false prophets, those who want to take a bite out of you, those who want to bark at you, and those who want to invite you into their own sinful wallow in the mud thing. And it's all right there in 2 Peter chapter 2, the wolves, the dogs, and the hogs.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't even need to teach it now. We can just do that. Just be done.
All I could think of is President Trump during his debate. They're eating the dogs.
They're eating the dogs. I didn't even catch that. Oh my gosh.
That's all I could think of, man. So great. Thank you for joining us on this week's Deeper Podcast. So glad to be back. If you missed last week's teaching, you can always go back to our YouTube channel, and we have those available for you. And anywhere that you listen to podcasts, it is there as well. We are glad to be back, and we'll be here again next week.